Coming to you from the Big Island of Hawaii, it's the Songs and Stories Podcast. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
Aloha, and welcome to the Songs and Stories Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Steve Roby, and joining me on the phone right now is award-winning songwriter Don May. Aloha, Don.
Hey, Steven. How's it going?
Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. Well, let's get started with a brief overview of your music career and how you got to the Big Island.
Wow. That's kind of a long story, but the condensed version is I am, I guess, what you would call a veteran of the Austin music scene. I was rattling around Austin for most of the 80s into the early 90s, and then in the mid-90s I moved out here with my family, and I kind of put the musician, songwriting thing on hold for a while. Just was doing a different kind of life and living in the jungle and growing food and doing the Puna back to the land thing. And then one thing led to another, and about 2005 I got back into writing music and putting some songs out into the world, and I kind of came across, I caught the attention of a guy named Jim Ed Norman, who used to live up in Kohala on this island, and he's a kind of a legendary music producer and arranger and publisher and record company executive, and he sort of took me under his wing, mentored me, and then that resulted in some kind of a string of publishing deals that has had me going back and forth to Nashville, writing with kind of a who's who of successful songwriters and some artists, and it's opened up a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities for me.
All right. So you eventually decide to make the trip to the Big Island and call it home?
Yeah. Well, it's been my base since, like I said, since the early mid-90s. And so I've traveled from here, and I've worked in Los Angeles, and I've worked in Austin, but mostly back and forth to Nashville as part of these publishing deals.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your songwriting process and where do you find inspirations and how do you start a song? Song
ideas kind of come from everywhere, and if you're like me, I mean, as songwriters the songwriters that I know, we have just like a list of titles and ideas and little snippets of melody. You should see my iPhone is full of probably well over 1,000 little voice memos of things that I've kind of thought about as I'm going through my day. And then when it comes time to actually sit down and write, you sort of pull all those things out and you try to piece them together and try to come up with a song. I've been lucky that the process for me has been different in that I've had the opportunity to be, downtown Music Row, Nashville, in the studios or in the offices with professional writers that do it day in and day out. And there's a much more of a business-like attitude about it. And, people that just have had amazing success and as songwriters. And that's one process. And I've done pretty well in that world. But I think left to my own devices, I think I'm probably, when I write by myself, it's a much slower process.
Well, that was kind of my next question for you too, is do you collaborate with others or do you like to work solo? Either one a preference?
They're such different animals. I love it. I love them both. But the collaborative process is about, reading the room, the give and take between, you and one or two or three writers. Is there an artist in the room? Because at that point, we're trying to help the artist convey what they want to convey most effectively, not necessarily what I want to say. So that's a much different process. The writing by yourself, you can write whatever you want, and you're also more likely to run the thing off into the ditch and come up with a piece of crap because there's nobody there to tell you you don't want to go there. Yeah. So the songs that I come back to time and time again, with few exceptions, are the songs that I've written by myself. I'm not performing. The songs that I just love and just feel most authentic for me are the ones that I've written on my own over the years or decades at this point.
Don't you work with some of the songwriters in a workshop up in Waimea? I guess it's not going on anymore with COVID-19.
Yeah, Steve, I started that songwriting group as a local branch of the Nashville Songwriters Association, the NSAI. There's a wonderful songwriter advocacy group and educational group, and their offices they're right downtown in Nashville. And I'm a longstanding member of that organization, and there are local organizations that pop up around the country. And I started that here, and I kind of ran it for I think probably a couple of years, and then it just got to be my travel schedule got to be such that it really wasn't making sense for me, and I kind of stepped back. So the Big Island Songwriters Group, and there's some wonderful songwriters and fantastic people involved in that, and they continued on, and no one's getting together face to face, but I believe everyone is still connected and working together. Yeah.
Has the pandemic this year caused any interruptions to your music schedule?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I'm not going to get on a plane and fly to Nashville. I mean, everyone I know in Nashville has been writing, via Zoom. There's very, I don't know. I haven't been there in a little while, but from what I understand and talking to people, it's really changed things. And it will continue to change things. The inability of artists to tour, has punched a huge hole in the music business, and it remains to be seen what will be left when things do get back to, quote, normal.
Right.
So it's been a huge difference. But what it's meant for me personally is more downtime, more introspection, and the realization that I just really want to put my own music out into the world. And so it's been a big shift for me. I've shifted more from thinking about writing for other artists to make my own record here with local musicians.
Sure, yeah. I think I read in the news today that the music industry says that it's probably going to be 2022 before we all, fans and musicians, get to see some sort of normal music concerts as we remember them. Yeah. It's going to be a while, yeah. Well, I've got Cool Little Town queued up. Let's talk about the backstory behind that song.
Yeah. Okay, so Cool Little Town is a song about the changes that I've seen in what used to be awesome. I mean, I call Austin home. That place has changed so much over the years. And what happens is a place gets, sort of a reputation as a cool place to be. And it's because of the artist. It's because of the weirdness. It's because of the dive bars and the crappy little restaurants, all those things that give it its character.
Right.
And then money moves in, and then all of a sudden, there goes it's not cool anymore. I don't know. Everything gets torn down.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like, and I've seen the same thing in Nashville. You would not believe the changes in Nashville. I mean, the recording studios that are gone, the music venues that are gone, the dive bars, just all the places with so much history that made the place what it was. And so that's what this song is about, I mean, this used to be a cool little town, and that's what it's about.
No more cool little town, huh?
Well, we got to be careful here because where we live up here, this big island is like one big cool little town.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Warning. Okay, let's give Cool Little Town, and my special guest today is Don May, here on Songs and Stories.
Well, this used to be a cool little town. I loved to cruise Main Street with the windows down. And everybody I saw would smile and wave. I'd give anything if it just could have stayed that way. Oh, but you blew in like a bat out of hell. Oh, Hollywood sexy, just a kissing and telling. I was love struck the moment I first laid eyes on you. I don't like to talk about it cause it's too late now, but this used to be a cool little town. Well, old timers are saying they told me so. And anything worth having's been bought and sold. Newcomers are sick of my stories about you. And to tell you the truth, I'm getting sick of them too. But hey, the party ended like it always does when you'd had your fill and had your fun. I'm still reminiscing about how good it was, and you're long gone in a cloud of dust where there's nothing I can do about it now. But this used to be a cool little town till loving you changed me. Yeah, I wish I'd never met you, and I'm trying to forget you, girl, but honestly, I can think about is how this used to be. Cool little town. What's done is done, it doesn't matter now, but this used to be a cool little town. Yeah, this used to be such a cool little town.
And I'm back on the phone with Don May, and we just listened to one of his original songs called Cool Little Town. I really enjoyed that, Don. That's cool.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks.
How would you say your music has evolved over the years?
Well, I'd like to think that it's gotten a lot better, honestly. Although there are still songs that I look back to that I probably wrote when I was, 25 years old that I think, there's something to that. Maybe I should revisit that. Because of the opportunities that I've had and the support that I've had, and to be in these recording studios and to work with all these successful writers, I've learned a lot about the sort of the intersection between art and emotion and craft. I think I have, if I'm not, this may, at the risk of sounding overly confident in what I'm doing right now, I think I've reached a kind of a sweet spot of combining those things. I understand the craft of writing a song. I understand, but I come from Austin. I come from a more raw kind of emotional, edgier place, and I think so. That's what I'm striving for. Music that kind of hits that sweet spot between well crafted, but not so polished that it loses its grit.
Yeah, that's a good point to be. A good place to be. Yeah. So, what are some of the challenges you've experienced being a musician here on the Big Island?
I don't know what the market is for the kind of music that I make here. There have been some venues that have been very supportive, and I've gone through phases over the last, probably at this point 20 years of I'll go out and play for a couple of years, and I'll kind of get bored of that, and I'll stop, and I'll kind of go away from that for a bit, and I'll come back to it. I think so. I think I'd be at a place to really speak to the bigger picture challenges, because I have not put a ton of effort into being a performer here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a lot of support for live music. I think we're just coming back to where I'm seeing more and more shows going on, and there's a ton of extraordinary talent on this island.
There sure is, yeah.
I'm just knocked out by the musicianship and performing ability of the people that call this place home. But I think, like any place, the scene has to support creativity, and I think because there's like a lot of tourist vibe going on here, I think there's a lot of awesome cover bands, but I don't know that original music scene has really taken off here, and that's something that really needs to be supported by a local fan base.
Yeah, I agree with you, and kind of one of the reasons I started Big Island Music Magazine is like, well, how do people around the island and the world know what the music scene is here, who we got, what they're playing? I've asked the question a lot to music producers that have come in here with the Hawaii Songwriting Festival. What's the concept on the mainland of what they think the music is here? It's not all ukuleles. There's you can find just about everything here.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Entirely. But I don't know if I don't know if the mainland really gets that. They may be figuring it out, but at this point, I think they're probably still thinking ukuleles and
hula skirts, and
there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. That's great.
Oh yeah, I'm not putting that down. I just was saying there's this concept here. People are here for only 2 weeks and they want to hear Hawaiian music, or what they're told Hawaiian music is. Yeah. Well, let's talk. Right. Let's talk about. You're also a multi-instrumentalist too. Tell me what else you play besides the guitar.
Well, back in the days when I was in touring bands in Texas, I played keyboards. I'm a trained keyboard player and piano player from way back. So that's been my first instrument. But then I realized you couldn't take a piano, out to the lake and meet girls, so you needed a guitar to do that. So I started playing guitar. And Nashville is a guitar town. There's usually a keyboard in the writing room, but generally speaking. But I know my way around a drum kit, and I play guitar and keyboards, and I program, and I'm doing a lot of mixing and editing on this record that we're making now. So that's what I do.
Well, tell me about what you're currently working on. What's this next record?
Well, we're making a record now, and I say we. I'm working with some really, really talented local musicians, and I'm working on a record now that is going to be primarily self-written, although there may be a couple of co-writes on there. But I'm trying to make something that, again, I'm aspiring to that sweet spot between, art and commerce, and well-crafted and emotional and edgy, and I'm looking for that spot. I realized when this COVID pandemic started that I could spend 40 years as a songwriter and have nothing to show for it except a bunch of songs on a publisher's hard drive in Nashville somewhere, hoping that, Kenny Chesney decides to put one on the radio. And that's all well and good, and it's a worthwhile endeavor, and I would love to have that kind of success. But this record is about me being me and saying, this is what Don May does, and this is what he did. And fortunately, there's some extraordinarily talented people here that are on board with that, and we're just gonna see what happens, what if we can create some magic.
All right. Well, keep us posted on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's. You sent over another song here called "The Devil's Footprints," which I'm sure has an interesting story to it.
Steve, we could spend half an hour talking about the background of this story. This, for me, is a very different song. It's a song I've never performed live. And it's the most metaphorical song I've ever written. It was inspired by honestly, by the life and death of my uncle. He was a Vietnam vet, and I saw him basically die of his addictions. And I had that title in my head for years. That idea, the devil left her footprints in the snow, and I didn't know what it was. It kept coming around and knocking on my subconscious, and then it hit me kind of like, oh, I know what this is about now. And the song really came out, which is very unusual for me. Usually there's a lot of rewriting and work that goes into something. So this is different for me, and I'm very, very pleased with the way that it's coming together. What I sent you is we're going to call it a demo, a work in progress. There's still some tweaking to do and some other things to add, but this will be the title track to this, what I'm imagining will be a 5 or 6 song project that we'll be releasing this fall.
All right, so it's still a work in progress, right?
It is a work in progress, but ready for prime time.
Okay, let's give a listen to The Devil's Footprints here on Songs and Stories.
In the snow, her heart-shaped kisses glistened in the moonlight on my window. Her voice was soft and sweet against my ear. She whispered like a lover, forbidden but familiar. I held her close and loved her, even though I knew those were her footprints in the snow. The devil left her footprints in the sand. I try to hide, but she finds me no matter where I am. Voice is harsh and dry as desert wind, reminding me that hers is really all I've ever been. So I bowed my head and she led me by the hand. following those footprints through the sand. So go on and tell yourself that heaven and hell are only in the eyes of the beholder. You can't outlive or outrun what you are or what you've done, and she'll see through every lie you've told her. Devil left her footprints in the mud. She circles like a wolf now. It's caught the scent of blood. Her voice cuts like cold steel down to my soul, telling me it's time. She's finally come to take me home. Too late for loving grace from up above. When the devil leaves her footprints in the mud, it's too late for loving grace from up above. When you see those devil footprints in the mud,
And that was The Devil's Footprints by Don May, who's my very special guest for this show here. What would you say the ultimate direction for your music is headed for? Is there a specific sound? Do you see something progressing there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this first record that we are doing is truly a product of this pandemic. I'm working with this wonderful guitar player, Lauren Broido, who I think you probably know.
Yeah. She's great.
She's recording from home.
All right.
I'm recording from home. I've got other players from the island that are recording from home. I've got people from Nashville recording from home, and then I'm pulling it all together here, to edit and mix, and then I'll send it off to get mastered. So what's happening right now is, we're not the first people to ever make a record this way, but it is a product of this sort of quarantine.
Sure.
But the next record is ready to go, and it's a full band record, and it's much more rock and much more in the vein of, Tom Petty or, George Thorogood or some. There's definitely a rocking guitar-driven, full band record ready to go as soon as we can get a bunch of folks in the same room and just rock out. So hopefully there'll be some continuity in terms of theme and vibe, and of course my crunchy old voice will be on all of it, but but that's the idea. And really what I'm after is what now is being called Americana. We used to call it alt country or whatever, but it's that America, right? That's my wheelhouse. That's where I live.
Yeah.
They'll both be of similar. That's what's happening. There's two records that are in the works. It's just a matter of time and finances and all.
Yeah, time and money.
Yeah.
So, with your years of experience, what's the best advice you would give a young and up and coming songwriter, either here on the island or just out there in general? Yeah?
Well, so there's a couple of pieces to it. First of all, if you can do something else for a living, then do it. Because the people that make it, generally speaking, are going to do anything and everything to succeed. The stories that I've heard in Nashville, the guys that, hey, McDonald's is having 72-cent hamburgers. You go buy 50 of them, put them in the freezer, and live on it for a month because they want to write songs all the time. So it's a hard business. But if it's what you are, and if there's nothing else that you can do but write songs, then what you have to do is you've got to commit yourself to no bullshit. Just you have to strive for excellence. And I think that's the biggest problem that songwriters have is they don't recognize the amount of work that goes into it because it's work. I mean, that's not. I mean, I've dug holes for a living. I know that kind of work, but
right.
this, So number one, it's a hard, very, very competitive business, and two, nothing will open a door for you like a great song. But you got to know the difference between a good song and a great song.
Two, wouldn't you agree that you almost have to become your own publicist these days and learn how to do a good pitch email? Otherwise, you'd have to hire a full-time publicist to get your work out there, right? I mean, you have to learn another skill too, yeah.
Steve, you're probably right about that, and that's something that I'm terrible at. It's an interesting that kind of balance. Like as songwriters, we're expected to be emotionally available, right? We got to dig deep. We got to go to the places that are hard to go to write those songs. But then we also have to have a tough skin for people to say, hey, you know what? This thing you think is so great, it's kind of crap, And they may be right or they may not be right. And then, yes, you're probably absolutely right about that. You have to be able to promote yourself in terms of making it as an artist, and even to an extent to make it as a producer or even a songwriter. I mean, the songwriters that I know that are super, ridiculously successful in Nashville, they have, they've got management and publicists and a legal team. I mean, they operate in many ways like an artist does. So yeah, I think you're right about that, but that's not something I know anything about, man. I'm trying to figure that out. I'm spending as much time right now trying to figure out how on earth do you promote an independent record? How do you make that happen? That's taking more work than recording the thing at this point.
Well, let me turn that around on you. So what's the best way for fans and people out there in general that would like to hear more of your music?
Okay, well, right now, I'm at this particular moment in time as we're recording this, all of that is still in development. But when people hear this, they should be able to go to donmayofficial.com. That's DONMAY official.com, and they should be able to find anything and everything Don May related so their heart's content on that webpage. We're shooting for probably a November release of this because it's going to take me that long to get any kind of promotion stuff in place. And at that time, we'll be releasing the songs to all of the, the platforms, Spotify and iTunes and Pandora and Amazon Music and all those places.
Wow. We'll be looking forward to that. Keep me posted on that too. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Well, just that I have been extraordinarily lucky with the kinds of support opportunities that I've had. And I am always, if there's anybody out there locally or anyone who hears this that wants to pick my brain about, my experiences at that level of the music business, I mean, I've had the amazing opportunity to sort of tread in some very rarefied places. So I'm more than happy to share any insights that I might have.
That's great.
And I really want to say to you, thanks. You kind of landed here and have just been the godsend as far as promoting local music, man. I mean, you've done a great job with it, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the compliment. Yeah, it's been interesting. I'm coming from the San Francisco Bay Area and, shooting at the Fillmore and all the other big venues 3 or 4 nights a week and then coming here and going, well, I still want to do that. So anyway, it's been going on for 3 or 4 years now, and I enjoy it. So, and Don, thank you so much for your time today, and I hope we can see each other in person real soon.
Yeah, I hope so too, man.
Okay.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Well, that's it for this episode. Please join me next time on the Songs and Stories podcast, and stay safe. Songs and Stories is a production of Big Island Music Magazine. Find us on the web at bigislandmusic.net and follow us on Facebook. Thanks for listening.